How's it going, everybody? In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over how to set up your brakes, your braking system, and your spool tension on a Baitcaster. So this is a Baitcaster. It's got your open spool. And the first thing to remember is when you're using a Baitcaster, your most important brake is your thumb. So when you engage your drive system, as that's pulling line out, I always keep my thumb on it, just barely allowing it to spin. And just as it hits the water is when I will hit those brakes and stop it. Because on these, your spool will tend to keep going, and that's where you get a backlash. Now you can set these up to where you won't get a backlash, but you're not going to get your distance. But that's how I'm going to show you how to set it up first. So the first thing that you have to understand is this dial right here on the side. These are for your magnetic brakes. And what that does is the initial burst of energy is where this brake starts to work on the spool. So if you're throwing your Baitcaster, and when you first throw it, if you're watching your spool and you start to get that bird's nest where it starts to fluff out, that means that this brake is too loose. This is the initial burst. This is your spool tension. This is where you make a long cast or just a cast, and at the end of your cast, if you start to get your bird's nest where it fluffs out at the end, that means this is too loose. So that's the first thing you need to understand. This is your initial cast right off the bat, your initial power. This is where it slows down, but it doesn't have enough tension to slow the spool down, and that spool just keeps going. So the best way to describe this, and I hope that you guys will be able to see this, it's very hard to do this. I did not bring a tripod. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our spool tension, which is this knob right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to reel it up a couple inches away from the tip of the rod, your bait, and then you're going to click your button, and this is going to fall pretty quick. I have mine set pretty loose, but we're going to tighten it up. Actually, let's just tighten it up now so that we don't get that backlash as bad anyways. So a couple clicks forward, and then you push your button and let it fall. Okay, it's not falling. So now we're going to keep that button down. Keep that button down and loosen up our spool tension just a little bit. Little teeny bit. See it start moving? There we go. That hit the water, and I got no backlash. So we're going to start with that setting right there. So that seems to be a pretty good setting. No backlash. Let's see what it's like if we don't thumb it. Now I'm going to thumb one, and then I'm not going to thumb one. So I'm going to push this button down. I'm going to hold that spool, and then I'm going to cast and release that spool, and I'm going to keep my finger on it, and just before it hits the water, just as it hits the water, I'm going to stop that spool from spinning. Stop. Okay, now let's see if that tension that we put on that spool tension is going to be correct. Okay, this time cast, and I'm not going to stop it with my thumb. Okay, no backlash. Pretty good. So that's a good setting for a beginner. Now we can try to get a little bit more distance. So I'm going to loosen this up. This is your magnetic brake. This is when you first take off. You first cast. We're going to turn it. This goes from, so my max setting is right here. So I'm going to loosen it up. I'm going to spin it one click clockwise. we're going to give that a shot. Okay, we're still not backlashing, which is good. I got a little more distance on that one too. I have to turn this way. I'm going to give it one more click. Distance is getting out there, still no backlash. Give her one more click. Now, if you notice as well, I'm not throwing this really hard. So this is going to depend on how hard you have to cast, the weight of your bait. You may have to reset your brakes. Still no backlash, getting about the same distance. So since we're not getting any backlash, I'm going to go one click and loosen up that spool tension just a little bit. Now this Baitcaster has a clicking mechanism on this spool tension. Not all will have that. Just know that when I'm turning this, I'm barely moving it, maybe a millimeter or two. So I'm not going to touch this right now. We're going to try that again without using my thumb. Got a little more distance and still no backlash. Still no backlash. So we're going to loosen this up one. Try to make that same cast. Still no backlash. I'm going to loosen that spool tension up one more time. There was one click. Barely turned it. Oh! I'm going to have to try that one again. I hit the trees over there. Now I'm running out of room. Move down a little bit. Give ourselves a little more room to cast. Okay. Starting to loosen up just a little bit, so I don't think we want to go any more on the spool tension. I am going to loosen up the magnetic brakes one more click. See how far we can push that. Okay, spool tension's a little loose. See that backlash? Not much, but we're going to tighten it up just to be safe. Give it another cast. All right, no backlash. Loosen up your magnetic brake. What I'm doing is I'm pushing the limit here to see where I can set this thing to not get a backlash. Now wind and stuff like that is going to come into play. Okay, that's backlashing, so click it back one more. Let's pull that backlash out just a little bit. There we go. Reel this in. Give it one more cast. That was pretty much across the pond. No backlash. So that's how you want to set up your brakes on a Baitcaster. Now, more advanced once you get used to it, once you get used to the Baitcaster and how to set the brakes, you can mess around with it a little bit, because you'll become a lot better with your thumb. You become a lot better with your thumb, and you can loosen these up to get more distance just by using your thumb as the brake. So always remember that when you set up your spool this way to where you can cast it without getting a backlash. I wasn't making really big bomb casts there, so once you start throwing it a little bit harder, you know, trying to get it out a little bit farther, a lot of that is going to have to do with your braking system. So play with the brakes a little bit. Make sure you're practicing with your thumb. Once you get better with your thumb and learning how to stop that spool and feel it, sometimes I'll hold it just above, my thumb just above that spool, and I can feel that line starting to come out, and I may just slow it down a little bit and get that to correct itself before it hits the water. But that comes with time and experience. So as you progress, you'll be able to loosen up your braking system a little bit to get a little more distance on your Baitcaster just by learning to control it with your thumb. So just remember, this knob right here controls the initial burst of energy. So once again, this spool, when it first takes off, when it first gets that burst of energy, this is the one that you're going to want to tighten or loosen if you're getting a backlash or a bird's nest on this. And then at the end, just before, like if you have it set right and you're casting it and you're not getting any backlashes, but you're casting on a windy day, for example, that wind is going to slow your bait down a lot faster, but that spool is going to want to keep spinning. So that's the next thing to remember is at the end of your cast, if that's when you're getting a bird's nest, this is the knob you want to tighten just a little bit to correct that. I hope this was helpful. I enjoy using Baitcasters. I have no problem with spinning reels. I'll bring out spinning reels every once in a while too. But Baitcasters are just so much fun to me. I feel like I have more control over the fish with the Baitcaster rod. They have a lot more backbone. And I feel like I can do just about anything with the Baitcaster that I could do with the spinning reel. I just enjoy using them. So if you're interested in using one and you wanted to know how to set the brakes on them, they can be a little complicated, but once you understand how they work, hopefully it'll be a better experience for you. So I hope you enjoy the video. I hope it's helpful, and see you on the next one.